the process for responding to the survey. If you are able to do that, please know it is anonymous, and we would welcome your participation. So Charlotte?
Yeah, hi everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Just a couple of quick things to get out of the way. We are recording this meeting, so we can post this later to the DDS website. We will post that link of where the information will be. We're also offering interpretation services today. We've got Brandon, who's providing our ASL interpretation. And then we've got Mark, who's providing Spanish interpretation. So we have the way that you access the Spanish interpretation is to, at the bottom of your screen, press the white globe, and it says interpretation, then click Spanish, and then mute original audio. And I'm gonna have Clara say that in Spanish.
Buenas tardes a todos. Para la interpretación en español, pueden oprimir el botón o el globo abajo que dice interpretación y oprimir español para poder tener la traducción en los dos lenguajes. Gracias.
Thank you, Clara. And I've already pinned Brandon, our ASL interpreter, but you can also pin him as well when we do the screen share so he can be in the view. We launched a poll when you first logged on. You should be able to access that poll. We just want to know who you are, what age group you're representing, and what part of the state you're from. So we just want to make sure that we know who's out there. And one last thing is you can see us, you can hear us, we cannot see or hear you. So the way that you can ask questions is in the Q&A down below. There's a Q&A button. Just press that and type your question. And we have DDS staff and also the autism staff the Autism Society staff are monitoring the Q&A as well. So that's all I have. So I'll turn it back to Nancy.
Great. Thank you, Charlotte. So let's see how we're doing with folks joining. Looks like, Charlotte, we're probably still about halfway there, huh?
Yeah, we had about almost 900 people register for this event. So it looks like people are still logging on.
Okay, we'll just give it a couple of minutes and then we'll go ahead and get started so we can make sure those who are here we can use our time wisely. So we'll just wait one more moment. Give a little bit more time for the survey.
And I just want to note that
probably the obvious thing is that I have the Dodger background. You know, there may be some Dodger fans out there, but just taking a chance.
Lisa Gonzalez put in the chat. She says, congratulations. Love your background. Hi, Lisa.
And I just want to note for those of you, if the poll disappeared on you, just click the poll button down below and it'll pop right up.
All right. So let's go ahead and get started. I think more importantly that if folks who are just joining a little bit late, that they get to hear the presentation by Beth is more important than probably my little introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So again, I am Nancy Bargeman. I'm the Director of the Department of Developmental Services, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to the second symposium that we are holding, and really pleased of the attendance and participation that we had last week. And we're really excited to welcome the Autism Society of Inland Empire today. So just as a reminder that this is the second of a series of 4, we have 2 more symposiums that we're going to be hosting. We have one on November 4th and one on November 12th that we also have scheduled. And that's going to be Friends of Children with Special Needs, And then we have innovative services that are being identified by the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. So really excited to welcome them in our future symposiums. As a reminder, the goal of the symposiums is really to spotlight kind of innovative ways of delivering services. This was stemmed from the challenges that we've been facing with the pandemic and having to be creative in how to do outreach, how to do services in a different way. As I'm sure all, if not most folks who are joining us today are familiar with the rollout of the alternative services model. And I know that there may still be some outstanding questions on the alternative service model. And we're happy to answer those questions, and we will make sure that we put in the chat ways that you can do that. First and foremost, make sure that you contact your regional center if you have any questions. But we do have an email address as well. I will just kind of give one quick reminder about the non-residential alternative service model is that one of the biggest questions that we have is that if somebody was receiving services, as an example, early start, other services in a traditional way, if they're doing it through remote, like Zoom, like this, is that an alternative service? No, that is still a traditional service. So it's just a reminder that, you know, as we continue to be creative, some of the traditional services can already be done through remote. So some of the presentation that we had last week, and you know, many of the presentations will demonstrate some activities that are being done by Zoom. It doesn't mean that that is a alternative service model. It still can be a traditional service. And really our symposiums, while they have stemmed from the need for creative thinking and looking at things differently, they're not all examples of alternative services. Again, many of them are done based on traditional services as well. So as we move through the presentation today, we look forward to your input. If you have any specific questions, I know that Beth and Clara are going to be more than happy to answer any questions that you have, but please be mindful at the end as they're answering questions, as you're presenting your questions. If you have something specific to alternative services or anything that is related to that they will probably be asking us to jot those down so we can answer those at a later time for you. So I am going to stop there, and I'm going to introduce Beth. Beth Burt is the Executive Director and President of Autism Society Inland Empire. Inland Empire is my old stomping ground where I grew up, so have a particular fondness for the IE. Hope everybody is safe out there, lots of fires, and so please hope people are staying safe, and thoughts are with everybody who's facing anything related to those fires. I'm pretty sure, and I'm pretty safe in saying that Beth's favorite role is probably being parent to her children, and one who has autism. And so she is somebody who has been a really great resource for us as a parent and a voice. So thank you, Beth, for your continued participation and helping us. And then Clara, who is also here to support the presentation as a Director of Programs. So Beth and Clara, thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I don't know, Charlotte, do we want to launch the results of the poll? Just so we can see what the audience is?
Yep. Yeah, we had about 67% of the people respond. So we can go ahead and I'll share them. So it looks like 74% of the people here with us today are vendors or providers. It looks like the biggest age group is for adults, so 18 to 64. But there was quite a few for children and minors and also seniors. And then it looks like most people are from Southern California. So Maybe lots of Dodger fans here today with you, Nancy.
I love it. I love it. I know. I was waiting to see how many Dodger fans we had in the Q&A. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. And it'll take me just a second because I have video clips that are going to be in there. And we will present. There we go. So thank you, Nancy, for that introduction. My name is Beth Bird. I am the Executive Director of the Autism Society here in the Inland Empire. And Clara Garcia is our Director of Programs, who's bilingual. So if there's any questions in the Q&A that are in Spanish, she'd be happy to read them after we finish the presentation. I am proud to be part of this, but I also want to say that we are coming at this not from a place where we think we're experts, but as a place where we're willing to share our experiences, the good and the bad, as a place of learning and just sharing. I don't think anybody's figured it out completely, and a lot of it's trial and error. And I think the more that we can share experiences and resources, the better our community would be. A little bit about the Autism Society Inland Empire. We serve most of Riverside and San Bernardino counties, which is about the size of West Virginia. We do serve primarily individuals and families who have a loved one with autism, but we actually serve all developmental disabilities. We serve all ages, all abilities, family members, and professionals, and both regional center and non-regional center families. And we try to provide most of our programs for low cost or free of charge. And we do this, like many of you, with very little resources. We only have 2 full-time staff and 5 part-time staff. And last year we served over 12,000 individuals through our family services, education, and resource support services. So we are, like many of you, used to doing things free as much as possible and low cost. So that's where you're going to kind of see our whole point of view from. So when COVID hit, like many of you, we were trying to respond to what the community needed. And we were getting calls all of a sudden from families who had been our donors that all of a sudden needed food. And we are a very data-driven organization. So we did surveys and we asked our families, what was it that they needed? We've done 5 surveys between March and September 2020. We've done 4 local Inland Empire surveys, and then we were part of the Autism Society of California survey. But we also didn't just use surveys. We also talked with families who use and don't use our services, and we've run some focus groups because we wanted to make sure we were getting as much input as possible when we were trying to build our services. On top of that, there was some data coming out pretty early on about the health and safety considerations. So out of New York and New Jersey, we found that people with autism and developmental disabilities were 4 times more likely to contract COVID and 2.5 more times likely to die. So right away, we knew that in person would not be a great fit for our population to keep them safe. Through the Autism Society of California survey, we found that 1/3 of our population said that they could not practice the concept of social distancing. 1 in 4 could not tolerate wearing a mask, and 1 in 10 could not wash their hands frequently. So again, we knew that this was important information when we were considering whether we were going to do in person or virtual. But another really big point I think that came out of the Autism Society of California survey is basically 20%, 1 in 5 of our population said that they were not benefiting from the teleservices. So we got this information from families who were doing ABA services, speech, OT, and even physical therapy. And it was pretty consistent across the board that we had a population that was not going to benefit. So we kind of took all that information and shook it up. And then we looked at this information as well. And we asked some very specific questions. And this is not all the data, but it was the ones that we're going to cover today. So food distribution, I mentioned at the beginning, we were getting a lot of calls from families who needed food. And you can see in March, it was 30%. April, May, it went down. July, it shot way back up. A lot of that was because the food services was discontinued. And as of September, we were still about 20% of the population that still needed food. We also have families that need PPE. And for us, we looked at it different ways, but even just for the basic mask, 1 in 3 of our families still had a need for that. Educational support, and I think we were about 40% of the population on today's presentation had young ones, but even for parents or vendors that are serving the adult population, if there's younger kids at home, a lot of our families are in crisis when it's coming to special education. So educational support ended up being our biggest issue almost all the way from March, April, May, you could see. And even in September when school had started again, this is just Inland Empire, we still had 40% of our families saying that they weren't getting enough support in special education. And then the last one I'm going to talk about with the data is the social emotional support, which we're all very aware of. And interestingly, in March, you know, when this hit, nobody knew how long it was going to last. We were focused on, you know, the PPE, about food. We were focused on what we would have thought were maybe big issues in our mind. But by April, we realized that the mental health issues and the social emotional support was a big part of this. And you can see where the graph actually caught up with that. So the first thing we looked at as Autism Society Inland Empire is covering the basic needs. So we thought of Maslow's, right, pyramid, the hierarchy, so food. And we got busy writing grants. We've written and received over $35,000 in food, and we've been able to provide gift cards to more than 150 families. We were also part of a new pilot program in Riverside where they matched some of our families with local restaurants, so they were able to get meals directly from the restaurants. And I want to say this is important because, as many of you know, we have a large percent of our autism population. In fact, our survey showed it was almost 2/3 of our population have what you might want to call a picky eater, but we call it's a restrictive eater. And these are individuals who might be on a gluten-free or casein-free, so no dairy, no wheat, maybe no soy diet. There are also kids and adults, and I have one of them in my house, who won't not just eat a certain kind of food, it has to be a certain brand. So if it's chicken nuggets, it has to be Tyson chicken nuggets. It can't be another brand. And so these families weren't necessarily fitting in what we would call generic resources. These are the families that couldn't go to a food bank or even the school lunches because their kids wouldn't eat this food. And that's why this was an important issue that we needed to address for these families. And we still have them. They still need food. We also have an undocumented population in our area, and they weren't getting CalFresh benefits. They weren't able to access the unemployment benefits, and they needed these resources to survive. The second thing that we considered a basic need was the mask. And we were grateful for the Department of Developmental Services and our local state council and our County of Riverside who've donated masks. And this is not something we've done by ourselves. We've done it collaboratively with our local Inland Regional Center, with other nonprofits in the area. We just had a Mask Up event with ARC of Riverside County on Saturday, and we do drive-through events. So families receive masks, they receive disaster preparedness material, and it's a great way for us to connect, making sure we're keeping them safe. And then the last part of basic needs is information and education. Especially at the beginning, it was really important that people had reliable information. There was a lot of information coming out, but it wasn't always reliable. We've been able, in partnership with the Autism Society of California, we've produced over 22 webinars since March that over 10,000 people have viewed since March, which is way more than we've done in years past. Additionally, we've also provided a new COVID resource on our website, and you'll have our website at the end, that we have all kinds of information on virtual field trips and fun things you can do on the internet, and practical resources as well. The second area we looked at was support, and that looked different ways depending on the families. We have 3 fabulous resource specialists who are all parents of either children or adults on the spectrum themselves, who answer our phone calls, our emails, and our social media. We've also started 2 virtual support groups. One of them's open to teens and adults with autism, family members, and professionals. And then we ended up starting a second one because we saw the need that parents of adults with autism had specific questions. You know, what's going to happen with a conservatorship? What happens if I die? And so we started a second support group to start addressing some of those issues. We've also been advocating, and one of the examples was the food that we had talked about. So we had raised the issue that we have families that have children and adults that may have very high behaviors, can't wait in line in a food bank, and wouldn't be able to eat what they were going to eat, even if they did get there through the line. And because of that advocating, we were able to get funds secured our way. We've also been advocating for special education services, of course, regional center services, and even childcare right now, because there's so many needs in our community. And then the last part is social media. We've been very intentional to make sure we're pushing out encouraging messages. And it's not that we have all the answers, but it's just, you're not alone. We're all in this together, and we're gonna get through it. So this is the main part of our presentation, is our social interaction for all ages. So we went from running 10 events in February, and those were in-person events, to 35 events a month. So in September, we ran 35 events, which was about 25 hours a month. And I was blown away by, I don't remember which organization it was last time, who talked about they do 220 hours of programming. That just blew me away. So again, we don't have a lot of resources, and you can see, and I'm not going to go through all of this, you can go back, but I'll hit on some of the highlights, that some of our presentations or our events are only 15 minutes a week. Some of them are an hour a week, some of them are an hour every month. So it looks differently depending on those specific needs of that population. And we're still playing with this, what works, what doesn't work, what times work. One of the feedbacks we got from our focus group is that, you know, families of the younger children are zoomed out, which I didn't know Zoom is actually being used that way, but they're zoomed out. And they don't want to be on Zoom anymore. So it doesn't matter how reinforcing the presentation is, they're just done. So we're seeing that some of the programs that we originally built for younger kids are fitting the needs of the older adults who are just so hungry for anything and any social interaction. So I think this next slide, nope, one more. This is the last part of data, I promise. The last thing we asked is, how do you want this service delivery method? So we knew that they wanted social interaction. We knew that they want all kinds of social interaction, but we asked, how do you want this social interaction? And we still have about 50%, and these are adults who are interested in online classes. But you can see about a third of them are looking for that outside. You know, they're interested in the small group. Can I go one-on-one with somebody out in the community, or you know, on a 1-to-3 ratio? But we do have people that are still interested. And then at the very end, you can see we still have people who aren't ready to resume services. That was 11%. And we have people that want to go back just like before. And that between the two of them is almost 20%. All right, so.
You're not a voice, you're just ringing in my ear. And if I heard you, which I don't, I'm spoken for, I fear. Everyone I've ever loved is here within these walls. I'm sorry, secret siren, but I'm blocking out your calls. I've had my adventure, I don't need something new. I'm afraid of what I'm risking if I follow you into the unknown. Into the unknown.
So I always smile when I see that. Let me make sure that stopped. Good. So that is our Fun Fridays. And this was one of the very first programs we started with COVID. We just wanted something fun for all ages. And it started out as a story time sing along. And we contracted with the people who had done our holiday party. We had watched them at the holiday party. They were awesome with our folks, very patient, understood that if we had adults that may be asking questions, not to take it offensively or to think that they were strange. That's just where they were developmentally, and they were fabulous. So we do pay a fee every week for this, but this by far is our most popular event. And we try to alternate. This is the first slide I'm going to show you. So this one we do some type of story time or sing along usually with this part. And it's not just girls, it's girls and guys and just people who want to have fun. It's just 30 minutes. If they get done a little early and there's not a lot of people on, the character takes time and talks to everybody on the phone or on Zoom and just asks them how their day is, you know, do they have a question? And it's been wonderful. Definitely our most popular. So we have also, the next slide is the other part of our Fun Fridays.
What's up, guys? Want to do some push-ups with Spider-Man? Come on, let's go. Like this. All right. Everybody jumping jacks together. Here we go. Excellent. Kick and down and kick and down and kick and 1, 2, 3. Guys, well done. Give yourselves a round of applause. That was not an easy workout.
So I hope you guys were all working out while he was doing that. So the other half of Fun Fridays, so we, like I said, we do one story time sing along, but then the other Friday we do some type of workout, usually with a superhero. So we've done Fun Fridays with Spider-Man. We've done Mickey dance parties. We did Baby Shark. Who would have known that Baby Shark would have been so popular? But it's just a fun, silly time, and it's been great. And again, you can see it's fun for all ages.
Hello everyone, my name is Eric Radenauer, and I am the facilitator for the Autism Society's Anime and Movie Club. So the Anime and Movie Club is basically a program in which people on the spectrum, such as myself, get together to discuss our love of Japanese animation and filmmaking together. One of my duties as a facilitator is to use visual media in order to really kind of get my points across when I'm talking with my club members. And a large part of that is done via the app Discord. And essentially what we do is we use webcams basically to visually communicate with each other. But then I also use streaming technology basically to show trailers, clips, and other different types of visual media so that everybody within the group knows what they're getting themselves into. One of the aspects I love about the club as much as I do is just seeing everybody's reactions to the club. People come in, they have fun, they get to talk about stuff that they love, and they make friendships. I actually have a club member of mine who actually started following me on YouTube, on my Twitch channel and stuff like that, and we've become very good friends since then. So for anyone who has young adults who are into Japanese animation or filmmaking as a whole, then these clubs are basically for them. Hello everyone.
Sorry about that. So that was Eric, and I love these clubs because these are run by somebody on the spectrum. We have another club, which is our role-playing club, which is kind of Dungeons and Dragons sort of thing that they do online, which is also run by a young person with autism. And it was important for us to employment. This is great on their resume. It gives them a sense of well-being. Eric was a film major at Orange Coast College for a couple years, but this is his passion and he's been doing a great job. It's run like a book club. So they're assigned a movie or an anime, and then the next week, this is every other week, they come back and they discuss it. So it's not for everybody because it's a higher level conversation, but I wanted to highlight that it's run by somebody on the spectrum. and that we have a wide range of services.
I ended up writing a book. I said I love animals. I ended up writing a book. And you'll find that this book doesn't actually feature any octopuses, but it does feature 14 animals that are definitely not an octopus. So I'm going to move my screen a little bit so you can get a better view of the book. And now I'd like to read to you 14 animals that are definitely not an octopus.
So we're not going to read the whole story today. But this is almost the other end of the spectrum. So the bedtime stories came about because, again, of our focus group, we had somebody who has a son with Down syndrome and autism, and she said, there's no way my kid's going to attend even for 30 minutes for a fun Friday. What do you have for him? So we thought about it, we brainstormed with her, and we came up with this bedtime story. It's only 15 minutes. This happens to be, we partnered with a publisher who publishes a lot of children's books. They don't charge us anything, and the author gets to read the book. It's 7 o'clock on Thursdays. This is one of the ones that we're trying to figure out if parents are tired, if maybe the time's not right. We have our regulars that come all the time, and it does help. It soothes them, and it does kind of wind them down. But it's also trying to figure out, maybe we get a volunteer to read the story, and do we want to do it in a more upbeat way and maybe put it on a Saturday morning? So we're still playing around with this one, but again, very low cost. Art class is another wonderful thing that we've been able to do because we have a wonderful volunteer. This happens to be a high school student who has a cousin with autism. And when the pandemic happened, she came to us and said, is there something I can do to help? I love art. Can I teach an art class? And we weren't really sure how it was going to go. She has been fabulous. And what happens every week, this one's every week for 45 minutes, she figures out what she's going to teach. And we publish that through our email or social media. And so people can see what the subject's going to be. And then basically she walks them through how to draw it, and they draw it together. It's been great. We have a few of the younger kids, maybe 11, 12, all the way up to adults. And it's been a great resource for them. And then our teen adult group. So we were already running 2 teen adult groups before the pandemic. We converted those over to virtual. One, which we call our Marietta group, which doesn't mean anything because everything's virtual, was more for individuals who are more significantly impacted and their family members. And then we have our Rancho group, which tends to be, many of them are regional center clients. Some of them are in workshops, some of them are working, some of them are in college. So we've got a wide spectrum in there. And the Rancho Cucamonga group, we found that they wanted to play trivia. We let them decide every other week, every other Friday, what they want to do. We've done karaoke, and we've done Pictionary, and we've done a bunch of games. They love trivia, which is fun. We're having a Halloween party this Friday night, but it's just a safe place. And it's funny, I was worried that an hour wasn't going to be enough, but it was. They come on, they say hi to each other, we do our activity. At the end, they can talk, and it's funny, they're very structured because at 8 o'clock, they're like, okay, bye. It was nice seeing you. They're done. They want to be done. And if we even are running a little late, they'll start to drop off because it's 8 o'clock. So that was a good lesson for us, that even an hour is enough. This Friday, we're a little later because we are hiring characters to come in to do sing along. So we'll see how that goes. And then last week, we tried our first in-person event other than our mask up. So we did a drive-in movie night. We partnered with Inland Empire Health Plan. They partnered with us, and this was done in the 66ers parking lot, which is one of our minor league baseball teams. They have rented out this huge giant screen, and they were renting it. So they had a capacity of 70 cars. And we had a free event. We chose, of course, a Halloween theme. We bought those little plastic pumpkins at the Dollar Tree, and some people donated candy. We donated some popcorn, just something very simple, very low cost. Had some volunteers, and we were able to give them the pumpkin. We had the masks to give them and the disaster recovery information. We had about 60 cars show up that night. We had a great volunteer who was making sure that they were staying, it was every other space in their car. The rule was if you got out of your car, you had to wear your mask. And if you got out of your car, you either were going to the bathroom, the snack bar, or you could put out your chairs right in front, but you still had to be in your parking space. And everybody did a good job. We only had one dead battery that night, so that was good. And then I just put out some more ideas for social interaction. So these are the ideas that we've received from our focus groups and our surveys. As you can see, there's a lot. We're not able to do all of them, but I just wanted to throw it out there so you guys had some of that information. We're still looking for individuals. You know, if we can have people volunteer their time, that's always better. If we need to pay them, we try to make it a, you know, lower rate, and maybe do it every other week instead of every week. But there's lots and lots of ideas out there. And then I just wanted to reinforce, ask and vote, you know, especially for our young people. We ask them every 2 weeks, what is it that you want to do? I don't have a schedule plan other than I've got a space on my calendar to hold the date, but I don't know what the next event's going to be. And we use Google and Etsy a lot for inspiration. So if they say, you know, we've done a Marvel trivia, I don't know anything about Marvel. Sometimes we get them, if there's one of them that are very passionate about the subject, we have them write up the questions for the trivia and then run it by one of the group leaders. We always want to make sure, because sometimes, especially with autism, if it's their passion, they're going to know these minute details that nobody else is going to know. We had somebody ask, help us with SpongeBob, and it was something like, you know, on episode 3 of season 5, you know, what was the nickname SpongeBob gave to so-and-so? And of course, nobody else would know it. So it's a good learning opportunity. They're still learning skills about how to facilitate and the kind of theory of mind. You know, would a lot of people know that question or not know that question? How do we do it? But you can also just Google it. There's a lot of information out there that it just takes a little bit of time before you do it. And then Etsy, I don't know how many of you use Etsy, but when we did our last Halloween trivia, I bought something off of Etsy for like $6, and it was already pre-packaged. It had all the games and all the answers, and it was just fun, and you could run it on the Zoom, and you didn't have to do anything. It is very low cost. So lessons learned. I think the biggest is entertainment plus interaction. These aren't individuals or family members that are just looking to be entertained. They want to have that social interaction. So make sure you're building that in with whatever program, that people have time to talk to each other and say hi to each other or goodbye or have those discussions. It shouldn't just be one way. It needs to be two-way conversation. This has also given us the opportunity to have frequent conversations, not only around what our company wants, but about COVID and how we're adapting. So in the Rancho group, you know, we had some adults that thought in October we were going to be able to open up, and they were like, oh, I can't wait until Disneyland opens up in October, or I can't wait until we can see each other and have a real Halloween party. And it was having those hard conversations with them that it still wasn't safe to do that. As much as we wanted to see them and have that interaction, you know, we were going to have to find other ways to have fun because safety was the most important thing. And it was hard, and they were disappointed, but they understood. But we're having a lot of those conversations. There is still a need for lots of advertising and reminders. So we have an email list, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, but there's a lot of noise out there. And especially we've seen that when there was, you know, the riots were going on, or even when the voting is going on, we can see Facebook and Instagram, people tend not to use it as often. So you have to be really aware of what's going on, and they may need an extra email reminder or that extra reminder. Just because it's on their calendar, there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stress, so they're going to need those reminders. And then the other thing we tried that did not work is we were going to try to do some actual skill building classes. We were looking at maybe internet safety, especially around voting. You know, how do you tell fake news from real news? And we had a special ed teacher who was building the curriculum, and we had 2 people sign up. So what we found is, this is a special ed teacher who has a lot of students who follow her and have been part of almost everything she's done the last couple of years. But we realized they're not ready for that heavy thinking. They're still focused on socialization and having fun, and that we needed to keep it lighter. We'll try again in the spring maybe and just see where we are. We've got the curriculum built, but just keep in mind where people's thought processes are. And then technology tips. So you guys are probably already great on Zoom, but here's some quick tips: is front load and reminders about Zoom expectations you expect. And we're still doing this every week. You know, for Fun Friday, we're going to mute you during the story, but afterwards you're gonna have time to talk. So that way they're not trying to unmute themselves or you're getting complaints in the chat that, you know, somebody has their hand up and you're not talking to them. We also set the expectation, raise your hand and we won't call on you. So they've been great at following the rules. You just need to be very clear about what the rules are. We also recommend that you have at least 1 staff or volunteer for tech, and then the facilitator of the group for a meeting over 9 people. It gets, and you guys have probably experienced this already, it can get kind of complicated if you're facilitating the meeting and you're managing the tech. Because sure enough, you're always going to have parents that say, I can't get on, or, you know, running late, or that type of thing. And it's hard to manage the emails coming in or the chat coming in and actually run the meeting. So anything over 9 people, we tend to have 2 people there, 1 for tech and 1 to actually facilitate. And then learn to use the polls, the screen share, the whiteboards, and the chat features for more fun. The whiteboard we used for the first time when we played Pictionary, and we didn't know how to use it. We just went for it, and it worked out great. It was good. Screen share has been good. I am a bit of a control freak, and we had one of our young people at our adult meeting said, can you share the screen with me because I want to share something. So I let loose the controls, and next thing I knew, I had like everybody was like, oh, look at my screen, look at my screen, and just making sure everything was appropriate. So we took that away from them, and we're much more careful about that. Everything was appropriate, but they were very happy to show you whatever was going on. And then people are forgiving when technology doesn't work. You know, we take a lot of risk, which is fine, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and people are okay. You just kind of have a backup plan and adapt. That's been very great, and it's also very freeing. So that's the end of my presentation. I've got our contact information in there. There's our names and our Facebook and Instagram and all of that good stuff. So I hope that was informative for you guys. I will stop sharing my screen and get out of this and look at some of the Q&A.
There's a couple of questions that if you'd like for me to send over to you.
That would be great, Miss Clara. Just go ahead and read them.
All right. So some of the questions are, and I've sent the link and I posted it in the chat, is how do they get, how do they join our events like Fun Fridays or any of these events? So I put the link to our website and the event calendar, and also Beth mentioned the newsletter, so you can subscribe and then we will send you the information for your consumers or for yourself. And then another question is, and this is, how do we come up for topics for games? And you kind of answered this one a little bit, that we survey our families, and you know, we just kind of Google a lot of it. And another question is also, are your programs free of charge? And or have we been able to charge for participating?
So
And-
that's a good question. And
Okay.
that's one Clara and I struggle with as we're preparing next year's budget. So most of our programs are free of charge, but the reality is we can't sustain, we're a nonprofit, we're not getting funding from any magic source. We have to fundraise money to be able to provide these programs. So we started charging for some of these programs. The anime and the movie club, we started charging. The role-playing game, we started charging. We just started charging for some, not all of our educational programs. And one of the caveats we always say is money should never be a barrier. So if for some reason somebody cannot afford a program, all they have to do is tell us, can I have a scholarship? We don't ask for any proof. That's all they have to say. And they're able to get a scholarship because we don't want a barrier. But on the other hand, we do have families that have the ability to pay and could donate that money to us. So it's a little bit of both right now.
So, and that ties into my next question. How are we funding this? And a lot of fundraising and donations. And if our staff is working less hours than pre-pandemic.
No, no, we are working many, many more hours than pre-pandemic. So we are funding this. Grants saved us this year. And for us, it wasn't just about, DDS or regional center. We joined nonprofit organizations. So in the Inland Empire, there's a nonprofit consortium, and that happens every week. And it's been a lifesaver, number one, to know what's going on in the county as far as opening and reopening and what the issues are. But it's also been a great source to be able to find out what grants are coming up. Riverside County released some of their CARES funding because of that nonprofit consortium, saying that, you're funding businesses, but are you funding nonprofits? Same with San Bernardino County. So there's the advocacy piece in there too, is making sure nonprofits are seen as employers in the community. But that's where the majority of our funding is from grants this year.
And to touch on the funding, someone asked about regional center, and we're not held to the same constraints with the regional center guidelines, correct?
That is correct. So, right, these services some of our conferences are vendored with the regional center, but all of our social programs, because most of them are free, are not vendored.
Okay, and another question is if any, so we service, they're asking if any other clients that are regional center clients can attend our events, and even if they're not diagnosed with autism. So all disabilities are welcome.
Absolutely. We are absolutely welcome. I don't think I answered your other question about if we're working less hours. So the answer is no. I think I said that, but we are way more busier than we were, and we've stayed busy since COVID. On top of that, I'm the only parent who has an adult on the spectrum. Everybody else has children. So we also have staff that are dealing with childcare issues, and they've been, I'm going to say I have the most fabulous team, right? We have the, but Clara works nights. So it's also that flexibility that they have is, you don't have to necessarily get your hours done between this time and this time. If you can get your work done, and we have one employee who likes to work at 12 and 1 o'clock at night. And it works. So as long as we're in communication, we are really flexible on our hours.
Thank you. And another question, it asked about a percentage for if we have a percentage of people that we know of that are able to access, that are not able to access our programs because they don't have internet and or devices. And the second part of that question is, what have we been able to do about that?
So we, from an online survey, right, the irony of that, 1 in 4, about 25% of the families said that having devices or internet connection is an issue. So it absolutely is an issue. That was done in May, and we haven't done a follow-up because we wanted to see what the schools were going to be able to deal with that as far as delivering software in the house. We also have a disparity grant through DDS that we're very grateful for. And one of the things we were able to do with that grant is provide low-cost tablets for all the leaders because, and this is a group Clara runs, that many of them were on their phone, you know, trying to access a PowerPoint or teaching and through a phone, or you could see that they were dialing in or calling in, but they kept dropping and dropping because of the phone or the internet. So we've been looking at those issues. We've been looking at, do we want to do a technology grant? But right now we're focused on food because again, resources are limited. It's a very important issue, but we're having to prioritize. I told you we didn't have all the answers.
So they're asking about volunteers and if they need to be background checked since they're working with individuals with disabilities. Is there any liabilities?
So we don't have volunteers working directly alone with any individuals with disabilities. Then that's part of the part of the technology. So we usually have a staff person. So if we have a volunteer, we have a staff person. So nobody's left alone, whether it's in person or virtually with our population, because we know that it's a vulnerable population.
And we also, do you have to live in California to participate?
No, we've got people from Virginia, Pennsylvania. When we were doing a workshop, and this was a lesson learned, we couldn't figure out why the Zoom kept telling them some crazy time for the presentation. We figured out that this person lived in Australia, and that's why it was giving them the presentation in Australian time, not in California time. So we have people from all over.
And that's exciting too, actually. So another question is from, they're asking if we plan to continue these programs after COVID, and can self-determination program funds be used for these programs? Good question.
So I'm going to defer this self-determination question to someone who's an expert besides me. And what was the first part of the question?
If we plan to continue using programs after COVID.
Yeah, we honestly haven't gotten there. I mean, we're just trying to plan next year. My guess, what we're planning for our organization is that we will be in some sort of COVID state for the next year. We know we've got vaccines coming in, but I mean, you guys know autism and vaccines, right? is not a popular topic. So we're expecting that at least for the next year, that there's going to be a need for some sort of online services. And then we'll look at how do we continue to do more in-person events. And next year we are looking at doing more drive-in movie nights. We were looking at trying to do like a drive-through holiday party. I honestly don't think that we're staffed and ready for 200 cars coming through. And part of it was for us relying on volunteers. Even for our movie night, half of our volunteers were no-show because Riverside County had just gone back into purple and they were afraid to come out. So that's the reality too of balancing it, is making sure that if we're doing it, can we really do it to keep everybody safe? So I think we're going to keep putting kind of our toe in the water and experimenting and see how that mixture is going to look.
And again, for more information, we put the website in the chat, and we will be sending that out via the presentation, correct?
Yes.
They want to know how they'll get more information on our events.
Yes.
And another question is, if they're a member, if somebody is a member of another autism society, they can certainly participate in our programs. We don't have a membership fee or sign up boundaries. And we have, there's a question about confidentiality concerns faced with the use of Zoom.
So we haven't had, and I've heard the schools have had that issue. We haven't had that issue. I don't know, you know, we don't record our, any of our clients, you know, everything that you saw today, we've had releases, and we don't go around taking pictures or using that kind of stuff without permission. You know, I'm sure that there's going to continue to be issues coming up, but we haven't had, you know, I've heard the issues of somebody, you know, walking around without a shirt on or that type of thing. We haven't had those issues yet. Doesn't mean we're not going to, but as of today, we haven't. How about one more question, then Charlotte can do her survey.
And our last question is, do we need volunteers?
Always. And that's something that we've been trying to figure out, is how do we incorporate volunteers into all of this? So absolutely, you can email us and we would be happy to.
Oh, I think Beth might have frozen on us. Uh-oh. Well, then I'll just take that as my opportunity to let everybody know that as soon as this meeting is over, you'll get a new window that pops open with a survey. And so we really want to make sure that we get your feedback. We're always improving on these events, and we take what you say to heart. So please let us know. It is anonymous, so you don't have to worry about that. And then Nancy, do you want to give any closing comments?
Charlotte, you just did perfect. So thank you. And I do want to extend appreciation to Beth and to Clara for sharing all the great and innovative things that you're doing. I was glued to it, and I think I want to join some of those. It looks really fun. So thank you. And thanks everybody for joining, and please do take some time if you can to answer the questions. It's very helpful for us to be able to continue to improve or provide information to the community. So please stay for a moment, and then have a great day, a great week, and continue to be safe. Thank you.